In the video today, I will show you how to knit this fringe throw pillow. As always, you will be able to find all the written instructions at craftytoots.com. Make sure you get gauge so you will have the same size that I'm making, and I am using the Rewind yarn by Lion Brine in the color Marbles. As you can see, this is a tape type yarn, and you will need knitting needles size 8 or 5 millimeters, and I am using circulars just to accommodate the large amounts of stitches. But if you're able to fit all your stitches in a straight needle, you can also do that. We start with a slip stitch, and we're going to do the knit cast on. For that, you slip from left to right, and grab your yarn and wrap it around your needle, then push it through just as if you were knitting. Let's start that again. I am trying to show you the throw method, and I am more used to the knitting continental method, so that's why I'm having a little bit of a hard time. So once you have a loop, you're going to grab your left needle and you're going to insert it and drop the other needle. So now you have 2 stitches, and do that again with the opposite one. You go from left to right and you insert it, grab your yarn and wrap it around, pull it through, and that loop that was created, you can pull a little if you need some space. You grab your left needle and insert it through that loop. So I got 3 stitches, and do it again from left to right. Wrap your yarn around, pull it through, and insert your left needle in it. Now I will just leave my needle there. It's going to make it easier and a little bit faster. And again, just wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and place it on your left needle. And just keep doing this until you have a total of 68 stitches. Now let me show you with the continental way. The technique is the same, and the only thing that changes is the way you place your yarn on the left instead of the right. Let me zoom out a little bit because I noticed that some of my hands were getting hidden. Just the same way, you pull the yarn through, you create a loop, and you insert it on your left needle. And each time you do so, you have more stitches. And again, remember, it's 68 stitches. I have all mine created now. And now what we have to do is to knit every single stitch. And to do the knit stitch, you do almost the same. You go from left to right. You grab your working yarn and wrap it around the needle. Then you pull it through and you will create a loop. But this time, instead of placing it on the needle, you will actually drop the stitch. And that is our first knit stitch of our first row. Then go to the next one. From left to right, you insert your needle. Grab your working yarn and wrap it around, pull it through, and one more time you drop that stitch. Now let me show you with the continental way. You place your yarn on the left hand, and I drop my stitch, so let me pick it up again. The same way from left to right, and then you can pick up your yarn or wrap it around, whatever you want. Pull it through to create your stitch, and let it fall. Left to right. And like that. So just keep working all the way until you finish your row. This pattern is very beginner friendly because we're only using knit stitches. Okay, so keep knitting all your stitches and you will do so until you have worked 135 rows. So just knit, 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 135 rows, and after that you will need to bind off your work. I have a dedicated video for binding off instructions, and I will leave it in the link below. So I finished my first row and I said to go to the next one. You do just the same from left to right, and you pull through the stitch, drop it, and just keep going. The more you practice, the faster you will get and the easier you will get to do your stitches. Okay, I'll be back after I'm done, and you will need to create 2 panels like this. They will have to be 18 inches by 18 inches, and you will be able to get that if you got gauge. Again, you will find information about gauge and craftytoots.com. And after that, make sure to wet block it so you straighten the edges and achieve the exact measurements, because sometimes when you're working, you can bend or you can create curves on the fabric, and you need to stretch it out to make sure everything is nice and pretty. Okay, so choose which one you want as your front panel and move the back panel away. Grab a tape measure and you will measure from the beginning edge, or also known as your cast on edge, up to 6 inches. And this is the first row that we're gonna place our fringe. And you can place a stitch marker there, or I will just grab a piece of scrap yarn, got my crochet hook, and then I'll place it there. So then later I know that my first row of fringe is going to be all the way here. Now for the second row, you need to start again at the bottom edge or cast on edge and measure it all the way to 12 inches. And again, you can use a stitch marker, one of those row counters, anything that you can place there to mark it. Okay, so I have my fringe where I want them to be, and now I need to create my fringe. For that, I'm going to use the same yarn I use for my pillow, and I have a Tassel Maker, but you can use anything you have handy. I really like this because I can easily change the size. I can take this out of the way, I can make it shorter or longer. So this is the size that my fringe is going to be, and of course you're going to need scissors. And so you just need to place your yarn right at the bottom and then start wrapping it around over and over, and each wrap is going to be 1 fringe once you're done cutting this. So you're gonna need to do this a couple of times, so just wrap as much as you can. Then you need to cut right here at the bottom. Don't do it on the top because you started right here, so to have a full fringe you need to cut right here at the bottom again. And now just slip your yarn through this, take it off, and again in the edge that you started and you cut your yarn, you have to insert your scissors right there, and you're gonna cut through all that yarn. Okay, so it's there. I have all the loops, not missing anyone, and then you have a lot of strips of yarn that they're gonna be your fringe. And just keep repeating, keep wrapping, keep cutting, and you will have more. But this will be enough to show you what you have to do, and I'll just go back with more later. So I already have marked the rows that I was working in, and I'm going to help myself with a crochet hook. I'm going to insert it through the stitches. Let me close you in so you can really see what I'm doing. Do that again so you can actually see. So insert the hook through the stitches, and you don't need to crochet to do this. It's extremely easy. Then you grab a piece of your fringe made from your yarn. You create a loop, put it in your hook, you pull it, and that's all you need to take out. You leave the rest there. You pull it again, both strands, make sure you're pulling both strands. And this time you will pull all the way out. And right there you have your fringe. You can tuck it in a little bit more to make sure it won't go anyway. But there you go. Now in the same row, go under and go under the stitch. I'm trying to create a straight line, and I'm just gonna guide myself with the previous stitch. And I'll go get another piece of yarn. Again, you create a loop, you pull through just a tiny bit, and then pull through both strands of yarn again, and this time all the way in. And it's right there next to it. And our rows and our stitches already create a straight line, so we just have to follow it. Let me do one more for you. You create a loop, pull it through one more time, and there you go. And of course you will have to do this all the way to the end, and once you're finished you will move up to the second mark. You can get rid of this, and I'm not doing this first one because I want to get it free when I have to join both panels. Okay, so we'll finish that and I'll go to the next one. And you pretty much just have to do the same. So I have my 2 rows of fringe. Again, of course, it will be my front panel, and I have a zipper. You don't have to use a zipper if you don't want to, but I prefer it. It's gonna make it easier to clean my... Okay, so some people prefer to put it on the top, but I prefer to put it on the bottom. That way I can hide it. And what I was saying, if you have a zipper, it's gonna be easier to clean it later. So decide where you need to put it, and didn't realize the zipper was a little bit smaller, so I'm trying to do my best to center. That means that little piece at the beginning and end is gonna won't have the zipper, but that's fine. It will be still big enough for me to fit my pillow form through it. Okay, so I will be stitching it by hand. And the main reason is that I am not very proficient with a sewing machine, but if you are, feel free to use a sewing machine to attach your zipper. And you can even use it to sew all the edges of your throw pillow. The other reason is that by stitching it by hand, you can hide the stitching and nothing will be noticeable. So you just have to go through the zipper and through the middle, or actually in between the yarn. So you don't go on the outside of the yarn. Let me show you right here that my needle is going through the yarn. It's just not going all the way. It's splitting it. And that way I can hide this stitching. If you don't want to go through the hassle of doing that, you can still go in between the bumps and go in the lower bumps like I'm showing you here, and you will still hide the stitches because the raised bumps of the stitch are gonna keep it in place. But I prefer to do my best to hide all this thread, especially because the color is not quite the same. And just keep touching all the way there, and then on the other side. So here it is. I'm gonna do another set of stitching because I got too close. And now you just have to match it, make sure both edges match, and then attach the opposite part of the zipper to the back panel. Again, it is easier if you use pins to keep everything in place and be sure that you are stitching where you have to be stitching. Or if you don't want to use a zipper, you can just go ahead and skip this part, of course, and just go to the part where I'm attaching all the edges together. So I'll just do the same. And we have this part almost done. You can still see the zipper, not everything, but a little bit. This is a hidden zipper. And now we just have to go through the edges. For this, I'm gonna grab a bigger needle because I'm gonna use the actual yarn that I used to create everything to join it together, and you can go stitch by stitch and just sew it together. And both panels should have 68 stitches, and both panels should have 138 rows. So if you pay attention, you will be able to match stitch by stitch when you're joining them. Again, if you are proficient with a sewing machine, you can do that with this. It's not that easy with yarn. It's not the same as sewing fabric, but if you're able to, and if you prefer that, it's way quicker than doing it by hand. I'm just going back and forth here, and I'm trying to keep the zipper tails in one place, and that's why I'm going back and forth here. And then it kind of attaches it a little bit. Okay, so again, make sure I match my stitch just at the top, and I sew it together. Once I'm done there, I'm going to continue to the other part. So it's a very short edge on the top that I needed to close because my zipper wasn't long enough. Now I just have to continue the line and make sure to join my edges. I'm going to do it until I get to the end of this side, but then we'll move to the next side. So here I'm all done. Now I made both tops to make sure they will keep the stitch in place. Now I'm gonna open the stitch, that way I can close it, and I will still have an opening where I can place my pillow. Now I can go through this side and finally the top, and here it is. I already turned it inside out, and because I have my zipper and I opened it before I closed it, I was able to turn it inside out. If you decide not to do a zipper, then go ahead and do 3 sides, then turn it inside out, insert your pillow form, and at the very end you will do your last edge. You will sew it together. If you do that, I will recommend it for the last side to be the bottom one. Okay, so I just close it. Now let me arrange my fringe, and that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe.